Hello, and welcome to the Old Farm Bus Podcast. This is the back of the bus session.
Hello and welcome to the Old Farm Bus Back of the Bus Sessions podcast. Today, I'm absolutely honoured to have this guest on with me. I've been listening to a little bit too much of you recently. For the last 2 days, I've been engrossed in Mark Can't Rap podcast. So I'm going to welcome you aboard, Mark Grist.
Oh, cheers, Mikey. It's nice to be here. Yeah, it's really nice to be here. What a lovely place your farm is. It's
Thank
cool.
you, man. I'm really enjoying it now. I was saying to you before, It was always a blessing and a curse. Is wherever you're from, you find the grass is greener. And people always used to tell me, you're so lucky, you're so lucky. And deep inside, I never felt lucky. But now I've got daughter, and we're really getting the blessing of the farm, and especially in the summertime.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I do feel it now. So thank you for that.
No, it's cool. I grew up in the Shetland Islands, like an island called Unst.
Wow.
Yeah, it doesn't rhyme with many nice words, but it's the most northern island in the whole.
Poet. This is where it all came from, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the most northern island in the UK. So I think there's about 600 people on the island at the moment, and pretty much everyone was doing farming. But they used to have an RAF base to keep an eye on the Russians during the Cold War, and so it was kind of falling into disrepair. So my dad was a surveyor, so we went over there for a few years to he had to like inspect the buildings and stuff. So I kind of grew up, like in a really remote kind of.
What were you
place.
living in? Normal house or
bungalow.
cottage?
So when I first arrived, all the kids asked me. They said, the kids. I mean, my year group was 5 of us, and that was the largest year group on the island. The year below me was 1 boy, and I turned up in the school, and the kids were like, "You're from the mainland?" I was like, "Yeah," and they were like, "Have you ever eaten at McDonald's? Like, what's it like and stuff? And is it like it sees because you get some adverts and stuff." And I was like, "It's not that good." And they're like, "Have you seen trees and stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've seen trees." And yeah, because there's the wind's so strong, it's fastest wind speed recorded in the UK. And then the equipment got blown away, so they're not completely sure how strong it is, but it means that you can't have trees.
The irony.
Yeah, so
That's wonderful.
Like houses, there are a couple of like 2-story buildings on the island, but mostly it's bungalows because things get blown down. I turned up with a slinky, and I couldn't find any steps. Like,
how old were you at this point?
I was about 6 years old, so like,
Wow, okay.
yeah, 6 until I was about 11. So most of my memories are like
0 till 6.
Yeah.
So
I was like Brackley, like in England, kind of like I think of it as being in between Bristol and Peterborough, where I now live. But yeah, kind of there. But I can't really remember any of that. Like I just remember, like wandering off after school and going and sitting on the beach and watching seals. Like that was kind of it. It's kind of the least urban environment you could ever imagine as well, for a guy who's making a podcast about rap. But
what were the kids like then around that area? Were you all very kind to one another? Was it a very wholesome vibe because it's such a small community?
Yeah, there was definitely like a sense that like, you would really pull together as a group. I mean, there was still a bit of like stuff, but like it was super soft and friendly.
Did they have a class system?
Maybe not that I was like that aware of. You had a lot of farmers, and a lot of the kids that I knew were farming. So like in farms, so they would have jobs to do in the evenings and stuff. But like, and then occasionally you get people from the mainland would come over. I remember my mum said to me, some like people from the mainland came over once and saw me and said, what's great do on the island? And I was like, well, they've got a pot-bellied pig at the top of the road. Go and check that out. That's really cool and stuff like that. But yeah, it was an idyllic, with, kind of childhood really. Like you could do whatever you liked. And I got on well with everyone and it was super sweet. Moved to Aberdeen after that, and that made me realise how nice it was because that was rough.
Really?
I got the crap kicked out of me for.
So you felt
for
quite sheltered there.
Yeah. I was. I remember
was it
like
all wind turbine, by the way. If it's the fastest wind.
Yeah, there's loads of wind turbines you can see out on the off the shore. But it's an amazing place. It was real great community spirit. And I went back there a little while ago, and like people were leaving eggs on my doorstep because they remembered my parents and stuff like that.
Dude, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a lovely community.
Does that come into your writing much then?
No. So this is something, you know what, it's a good, wow. I don't really ever talk about it. Like, I don't really ever talk about my writing. And I kind of, this current series of Mark Can't Rap is, we're about to get into it. because I kind of don't talk about anything personal normally in my writing. I kind of realize it's a defensive thing I have, where I kind of will just kind of keep my feelings out of a lot of my writing that I work on.
You got to it though in series one,
didn't you? Shay got me in series one of the to write about my own kind of mental health and things like that, and she kind of really made me. I found that very difficult to write the track that I had to write for that episode. So if anyone's not, which I assume if you're listening right now, you haven't heard the podcast. The whole podcast series is built on the premise that as an English teacher, I often found it weird. That we would often say to young people, this is the right way of using words, this is worthy of study, this is really impressive. And a lot of young people who had their own forms of literature that they're interested in, rap lyrics, stuff like that, we kind of transmitted, I think, to those students that kind of writing was worth nothing in an English classroom. Not worthy. Yeah, and a lot of the kids that I would meet in schools, and I visited a lot of schools who kind of like writing the most in their spare time, or are most passionate about writing in their spare time and consuming the writing of other people, like through rap and through lyrics. They also kind of, a lot of those kids hate English lessons, and I don't understand why that's the case. And the only ones who can really change that, I feel, or who are responsible for changing that, are teachers. So when I was teaching, I asked a few times about maybe having inset days focusing on rap, and maybe we could try and learn things we don't already understand, so we could understand, how to kind of, how to engage with something that they were passionate about. And it was kind of, it was not really considered doable. So I started doing it in secret. I ran a rap club. I started learning about rap from my students, kind of went to a nightclub and kind of did a lot of rap battling secretly. And then eventually, kind of went out and did it properly for a league called Don't Flop, and it got filmed and... went viral, so the battling kind of stuff went viral and became a national news story. This kind of, I had this rap battle with a 17-year-old MC called Blizzard, and it was on Channel 4 News that I'd done this. Like Daily Mail were like going, this is no kind of language for an English teacher to use, and they had an article about it. That The Sun had The Guardian, everyone was kind of talking about it, and I felt really funny about that because it's kind of like saying that for like a white middle class representative of education to be engaging in rap in some way is so weird that it's newsworthy on a national level. There feels like there's something kind of a bit weird and a bit wrong, because fundamentally I can't do it very well. Like I can't rap very well. And a lot of the teachers that I speak to about whether we should learn more about rap, they can't rap either. And so I often think, well, if we care about writing and language, and that's what we dedicated our lives to,
expression.
Yeah. Why are we saying that this thing that we don't understand, that seems quite complicated, is worth nothing? And I think there must be lots of other kind of, I think there's lots of social, political reasons why that's the case. So I left teaching, Mate, and I've been working with departments and visiting schools and writing and kind of exploring this kind of stuff and making this podcast, Mark Can't Rap, which at the heart of it has this premise that I'm really bad at rapping. I don't know how it works, but I want to learn. And and I've been kind of interviewing MCs and kind of going through the process. And one of these episodes, great MC Shady said to me, you're kind of just playing a bit of a game with this. You're not really how serious do you want to get?
Satire when I was first listening to the episodes.
Yeah,
I got that energy of, does he actually care about this? And does it matter to him? Or is he just having fun? Is it satire? Is he mocking rap in some way or another? Okay. I'm just being really honest
that's
there.
Interesting. Well, it starts with me and Ross laughing, right, about the situation that I'm in, where I'm going to go to Mexico to rap and be assessed by the global head of music innovation at Redbull.
Because you've got...
which is weird as a concept anyway.
You've got a kind, humble voice. But it's this voice that I'm always ready for something funny to come out, and I don't know where that comes from or what comedians I like, where I sort of had this acquaintance where I was like, is Mark a bit like this and this?
Okay, yeah.
But when that episode, and I sent it to you on email recently, I said, I'm so happy I found this episode, because that's where it started sort of transcending that, no, this is serious. This has got an element of importance to people in their lives, and why rap can be a wonderful skill and a tool to express yourself, and more people to access getting their story onto the page. And I really want to go on to the podcast with you,
Yeah.
I just want to find out a little bit more about you, because this is how my podcast rolls.
Okay.
Is we dive in.
Yeah.
And we were going on the story of you. And then we got onto the podcast. But from 6, you went to Aberdeen, was it?
Yeah, so I went to Unst from about 6, and then when I got to, I think, about 10, nearly 11, we moved to Aberdeen for 1 year, and it was bad.
Because that basically, the thing where it's got serious for me, and writing is serious, quote unquote, is because I felt I didn't have a voice, and I never felt listened to or heard. And I wondered where you discovered writing and the moment that it became an important tool in your life. And then I think we can get into the podcast a little bit more, because we can talk about why Mark Can't Rap isn't just sort of satire or a playful little podcast, but it's got so much depth to it. And I think for me, I'm probably on episode like 9 or 10 now, so there's seasons to it, isn't there?
Yeah. So season 1 is all about me trying to make a mixtape and trying to learn the process of going through that. And then season 2 is COVID hitting and trying to navigate COVID by learning lessons from rap and MCs.
It's just started to develop into this thing where it's inspired me so much. I feel really, I'd had a bit of time out from writing.
Okay.
I wasn't feeling passionate about anything in particular. I was just in a nice state of flow. Family life, the business is operating in a way that I'd want it to. But after hearing so many of these episodes develop and all these different artists talking about their perspectives and subjective feelings towards the art form, it's got me thinking again. It's really put me back in this flow of, oh my God, I need to think about what I'm thinking. Does that make sense? I want to really dissect the way that you have. Why is this so important to people? What stories have I left untold? It's making me really reflect back down into my childhood and past now.
Oh, wow.
And go back into it.
Oh, so that's cool.
Let's go on to where writing began for you. Okay.
So growing up, 2 things that I got from growing up on Unst, I guess. One is that I didn't have many people to hang out with, so a lot of other kids were working on farms. They had a lot of chores in the evening. I didn't. Also, the wind was pretty bad. The weather's quite bad. So to get to anyone's place was a long trek. So yeah, there wasn't much of that. So I was stuck in the house quite a bit. Electricity wasn't that consistent. Like, you have quite regular power cuts, but I could get books. And so I just read, like, loads. And I really enjoyed reading. And I kind of played lots of games with language when I was a kid. I used to teach myself weird things. Like I taught myself how to recite the alphabet backwards. I used to time myself to kind of do... That's very, very weird. But yeah, like ZYX, WV, UTS, RQP, ONM, OK, JH, GF, DCBA, like stuff like that. I used to I did weird things, and I used to do weird writing kind of exercises. And when I came down to the mainland, my reading age was considered to be like way ahead of my year group. And I'd read everything, like almost everything in the primary school. So I kind of got to a point where there was nothing left to read. And so English was always like something I found quite easy compared to other subjects. My vocabulary was much wider than other students. And I was reading, like, it's not a massive thing, but like, Lord of the Rings and stuff by like 9 or 10 years old. So I was playing around with words quite a lot, and I was really enjoying words. And that was like kind of, when I think back to the island, I think about words and playing with words all the time. And then also, I remember the big thing that we had on the island was you would come together and you'd kind of gather in a community and people would perform something. So my dad was a Morris dancer, my mum did like clog dancing. They also kind of played squeeze box and instruments and stuff. And it was a very big part of that island community is everyone's kind of equal, everyone brings something to a gathering and everyone shares something. And so for me, I kind of got this idea that like if something happened and it was funny or it was silly or anything that could give someone a little bit of warmth, a little bit of fire, in a kind of remote environment, it was worth kind of writing about. So I'd often write about kind of funny things, silly things. And when I kind of I remember when I got to the mainland, after Aberdeen, when I moved down to Bristol at primary school, I would write every week the funniest or weirdest thing that happened in our class. I'd turn it into a poem and I'd share it with my mates and stuff like that. And so I think the first time I really remember writing, like and enjoying writing for people, was probably, primary school, when I was kind of writing these funny poems about what happened. Our teacher getting really angry with everyone because we'd change the time on the clock so we could get sent home early or something like that. And writing about those things to make my mates laugh. But I think it started back on the island when I had this idea of like, you write things to kind of like warm each other up, and kind of like come together a bit.
A lot of artists you meet and poets, and the commonality that I've found is through a place of pain a lot of the time.
Okay.
And it's through a dark place that they've discovered it, and then they sort of go on this trajectory. But for you as an anomaly to come through a warming, sharing, kind place.
I'm very major key. Like, I'm not minor key. So when I work with Mixie, like an MC that I've been working with for years, like an amazing writer, he's always saying to me, whenever I try and work in rap, he's always going, why do you keep choosing major keys? You keep choosing a major key.
Yeah.
It sounds too upbeat. You need to go like a minor key. And I find it really weird, like uncomfortable to dip into that depth of feeling. Normally, I'm kind of approaching writing from a perspective of like a kind of like upbeat things are pretty...
That emanates in your character, and that's what comes across. And I wonder if people that choose to always express through minor and talk of the dark, do they wish to sort of stay in that because that's where they write best then? So they're sort of, the soul or the psyche is searching for trauma or for pain.
I don't know. I think it's pretty cool if people are doing that, to be honest. Like, I just think... Here's one thing that I think from being a teacher, because I was a teacher for a long time, you have this real... I have a real fixation on fairness, because you have to be kind of a benevolent dictator, right? Like, to an extent, everyone has to do what you say and you have to be in charge, but you have to be trying to do things that are best for everyone and are consistent and are fair. And so it feels really weird when you leave your classroom and the world is not like that. And it seems like really outrageous. And I've found leaving teaching to then move into like the world of poetry, I find there are things about poetry that I find really unfair and weird, considering it's like an art form that I feel is supposed to kind of maybe make us kind of dig a bit deeper and challenge us, to be better or to be to grow in some way. I find it kind of funny that, I don't know, I think sometimes I feel there's I've been in situations where I've heard some pretty kind of like I feel quite closed-minded statements about writers in different areas and different types of writing. Like, there's only one way to write a poem or one way to approach something. And so I often think sometimes I might hear someone being interviewed and they ask what makes a good poem, and they kind of go, well, it's kind of the way I write a poem is kind of already, and I think it's a cool thing. But so that's, I feel very aware that like I'm major key, that's cool. But like, yeah, I'm very passionate about people who are writing a minor key, because I find that scary. But like people writing rap, I think if I can't do it, I always think it's pretty amazing.
I just think promote writing as much as possible and enjoy the process for people. It's what's tainted it for me are the make it attitudes. Gotta make it. And it's like, but you're making it as you're writing it. And it is so subjective what makes a good poem, what is a good poem. And for me, it's when you truly have sat there, something that you've experienced or been through or thought of, it could be somebody else's experience, but it makes you curious and you've got this feeling towards it, and said it in the best way you could. It could be rhyming, it could be every other word's a rhyme, or it could be not at all. But it's just a piece of you on a piece of paper, really. And that's why I've never truly understood slams or enjoyed the...
Oh, because it's competitive in a way.
To a degree, and I do get it to a degree.
Yeah.
But it's even the conversations around what is a good poem or what makes this, and I'm just like, I feel, and this is just through my own experience of it, everything's great because somebody's tried to put it on a piece of paper And it's not great as in I have to listen to it and applaud and feel entertained. It's just great that they've given it a go, because I don't see enough people, through my experience again, thinking enough about what they want to say, owning their voice, finding the power in their voice. So I just love the art form because it gives allowance to finding who you are in an essence.
I think that's a good thing. Like I think you've got like in teaching we have like the learning and then we have the outcome, and the learning is what you've learned over the process of making the poem, right? And the outcome is the poem. But in many ways, you could almost argue. I guess the way I view writing workshops and working with people is, there's a big part of me, because I come from teaching, is kind of the outcome is almost kind of the waste product of the learning. Like the poem, it's cool and it's great, you know, and it might be amazing, might not. Like I'm almost more interested in the journey of the process of writing and what you gained through that process. You know, the experience of like how you feel and how you change and how you evolve through the writing of poetry, than the poems almost themselves. Like I read some amazing poems and I listen to poetry I love and it's great, and there's stuff that I like, but I never really feel that concerned about trying to work out what the best stuff is or anything like that. I kind of feel like that stuff will rise to the top through like opinion and everything else. That's cool, but for me, I kind of am more interested in
enjoying it.
Yeah, and like helping people kind of like go through the process of what it does for them.
That's where I was alluding to.
But then this is the thing. I like that there are the people that have a different outlook and how they go to. I think what I find tricky sometimes is if I hear people like kind of firing shots at people that do things differently to them. But I think even if it's doing something differently, it's not hurting anyone, or
just
it's not like
fire shots, because you're gonna eventually put somebody off by doing that. Because for me, I was always fired at. I've got a very simplistic way of writing. I love rhyming couplets and just bop 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 bop. But it was a way for me to access telling my story that I never felt I could do or was allowed to do. And then I had a quote unquote friend, but somebody that got a bit too drunk one night and basically just told me how shit I was for about an hour solid. I stayed there for way too long. And luckily that friendship diminished. But it really hurt me for a long time.
Okay.
I stopped writing. I shouldn't have let it, but again, I'm quite a sensitive soul.
Yeah.
And he just really didn't understand what writing was doing for me. It wasn't really for anybody else. I know I was performing on stages and so on, but it was a healing process that it was integral and so important for me to go through. And for him to just get overly drunk one night and just tell me I need to go to uni to study it because I can't do this and I've got no technique and da-da-da-da-da-da. I thought, oh, right, well, this poetry game isn't for me then. So,
but the thing is, you probably hadn't, I'm guessing you hadn't asked for that feedback. And often I think unsolicited feedback is given to you because it's good for the person giving the feedback, right? Like it's really nice, you know, giving someone, telling someone what they're doing right or not doing wrong, because it kind of puts you in an authority position and it makes you feel a bit more sorted. So I mean, my gut feeling, I can't say for certain. I think it's probably more about something going on in their life.
And I think as I've matured, and that was a couple of 3-4 years ago, maybe longer now. But as I've matured, I've realised, you know, I look back at my old writing and the books and so on, and I still smile at it. It's got that nostalgia, and I have developed in time. But I do feel if you just take shots and you fire, you don't know where somebody's in their journey and how important it is.
And also it's very quick and easy to do that. I think it's quite a long process for people to kind of create and build something and make something. And I don't know, I think it's quite quick to like criticize. And I think it's probably quicker to do that than to work on your own material sometimes, you know, and work on your own craft. So I don't know, I think like at the moment I'm kind of hoping post-COVID that people are a little bit more supportive and sympathetic towards each other, but like I've definitely I as far as I'm concerned, the thing that grates on me, I think, is whenever I kind of hear writers kind of saying, well, of course, there's only, this is really, this type of thing's awful, or
this is how it is.
And you're like, well, it's just not how you do it, is it?
Yeah.
But so it's either worth nothing or it's worth something, and if you don't do it, it's worth nothing. That's interesting, isn't it?
I'm already in on this chat. So I'm getting this awesome story where you've grown up in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Then you've come over to some hardship.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Aberdeen. Yeah, it was rough.
Reading all the time.
Yeah.
Going on into your 20s now, let's say. Mm-hmm. Are you writing poetry at this point? Still?
Oh, okay. So I kind of stopped. When I got to secondary school, I stopped for a bit. I joined a band. Some mates and I, we started a band. I couldn't sing, but grunge was huge. So it was kind of like, fine, you didn't have to be able to sing, at that point in time.
What was that? What was the band name?
Oh, it was really bad. It's called Weird Nature, because we couldn't think of a name, so we picked up like a random book off a shelf. It was like an X-Files annual, and we were kind of like flicking through, and it just said Weird Nature, and we're like, all right, cool, it'll be Weird Nature. But we misspelt, we put the E and the I around the wrong way, so... and it was awful. We swapped that after about like 2 months.
What? Wyatt?
Weird Nature. We had an amazing guitarist. Like Dan Hayden was like a really cool guitarist, but he got quite. He didn't enjoy performing live. But he was great, and we had awful songs. Had like a keep my sheep. Just awful weird.
Still real to you though.
Yeah. Quite weird, surreal kind of stuff, and it was good fun.
Abstract.
We used to play at Keynsham Football Club. That was the only other place we performed. We performed there quite regularly, and a lot of people in my year would get to head out to there and drink underage, right? So we had a good time for a couple of years, and then went to university, UEA in Norwich, where they've got a great creative writing course. Saw loads of great poetry. And was really good friends with some amazing writers. And to be honest, I kind of felt I just didn't have what it took, during university. So I stopped writing. That was my least productive
the
stage.
aim there then, where you went into writing, but you were seeing everyone around was, quote unquote, again, a better writer. Yeah. What did you want to go into?
Teaching. I was pretty convinced I was going to be a teacher, and I enjoyed, like, it sounds weird, but I used to run a pub quiz every week, and that was my real passion. And running a pub quiz for a bunch of people quite pissed on a Tuesday night. It's a little bit like a year 10 class at times. So that was really nice, and I enjoyed going through that process. But when I moved to Peterborough, and there was no poetry scene really anymore, and a lot Peterborough is identified as at that point in time was a cultural cold spot according to the Arts Council, which is a very polite way of saying
shithole. Yeah,
there's nothing going on. So some friends and I, we started a pint of poetry night at Charters, like on a barge in Peterborough, and we thought we would turn up and just read our favourite poems to each other and drink some beers, and then after the first month we all kind of thought, well, maybe we should each write something and read that out as well. And then the night ran for 10 years. And,
oh, wow.
And every month, local people would come out and people would read poems about, someone had a really bad haircut, or somebody's daughter was moving out and they were kind of like adapting to that, or someone was writing about, we had a vicar who spent a lot of time with people on their deathbeds, and he wrote a poem about that at one point. I remember that, being a very powerful moment, people talking about the local posh ground, people talking about moments of racism they've witnessed in the city, and just all these things kind of being shared, and it felt for me very much like I was back on the island, seeing everybody kind of sharing, doing their bit and sharing
community
their stuff
again.
Yeah, and I loved it, and that's what really got me writing. And I wrote stuff loads and loads, and every month I would share something new, and then after doing that for a couple of years, I had enough material that I could pop around to music festivals or go out of the city. You drive all evening and you get paid less than the travel cost or whatever to go and do a bit while the raffle's going on or something, like read a couple of poems and then come back. So kind of did that for a couple of years, and
I like that saying, if there's not a scene, make a scene. And that's truly what you've gone and done.
Yeah, a few of us, we and it's still going now. It's amazing because you've got Stanford asked if they could take the name Pint of Poetry and put it on in their night there, and you're like, cool, that sounds great. So even though we ended Pint of Poetry in Peterborough, it still exists in Stanford. Completely different people are running it. They're doing their own thing, but it's lovely that you can just see these little ripples of things that happen. That's the one thing. I mean, you must find this, like, time goes so quickly that even when something's a bit exhausting as it's going on, suddenly it's 10 years later and you're like, oh, you can kind of see all these little ripples or these ways that people who've come and met, for example, at my poetry night, they're now collaborating with each other or they're working on different things together. And it's lovely because that would never happen if they not met at that event and stuff.
Like a beacon. Yeah,
and I often think, like, I couldn't keep working as a producer when I left teaching and started trying to do this, whatever this is, full time. But like, I kind of really feel like producers are like immensely important to getting any kind of scene going. And I think we had a real boom in spoken word. And I think you could say like K Tempest was a real kind of like, element in that, like as an artist and a bunch of other kind of spoken word artists were doing things. But I kind of think the producers were really pulling in the same direction around the country to kind of build that kind of energy as well. But yeah, it was cool. I got a lot. And you know what I found really useful? Peterborough at the time, there was no university. You've got people were quite suspicious of poetry. A lot of people felt that I met that they didn't like. They weren't clever enough for poetry, or they weren't allowed to enjoy poetry in a way, or that in some way it was just very separate from their lives. Trying to jump up on stage in a pub and say to those guys, "Hey, can I read you a poem for a second about something?" and then trying to like share that with them. Writing for that kind of audience, it turned out was really useful when making work and putting it on YouTube, because that was quite a good focused demographic to then write something that is quite shareable and that a lot of people can access. So I really like that I've lived in Peterborough for a long time. I think it shaped my writing, and it kind of stops me getting, I will trim my work and I will shave out sometimes language that I think feels, am I putting this in because it makes me feel better? Like, does this make me sound clever? Am I trying to make myself sound more sophisticated or erudite in some way? I'm like, does that really help this message get across to someone else? So in my editing process, I think, being in Peterborough was really useful. And it helped me kind of develop the style that I've kind of gone with. So, yeah, I think that was it. But there was a lack of that stuff that kind of led to me really kind of diving in.
What a great build-up. So then you're in Peterborough, you're creating this scene.
Yeah.
Are you then an English teacher at this point too?
Yeah, so I was an English teacher. I used to kind of rock up at like the Glass Onion, which is a kind of a venue, and I think a lot of people at Glass Onion were like, who's this guy in a suit who keeps coming down here? But yeah, we kind of set up a poetry night there as well then, and we were getting artists like Scroobius Pip, Polar Bear and stuff kind of coming down doing
the heavy
sets.
hitters.
Oh no, Polar Bear didn't actually come down. We were going to have Polar Bear. But yeah, we had like, Kate Tempest and,
fantastic.
Luke Wright, Tim Clay, like loads of really, really good writers were coming through. And that really turbocharged the scene. Yeah. Because people really kind of saw those artists and then they kind of like really improved their writing, kind of like working on that. And I felt very much like Peterborough, weirdly, was almost like my classroom, but it was adults, and I was really trying to do what I could to like curate, kind of to help them develop as writers, to kind of get stuff like that going. And I hit a point eventually where my headmaster called me into his office, and he said, "Mark, do you think maybe you shouldn't? Have you ever thought maybe you shouldn't be a teacher?" And I was like, "What?" And he said, "Do you ever think you're a poet? You should be a poet instead." And I was like, I don't know. And we had a chat about it, and I ummed on it, but like they offered to hold my job open for a year if I wanted to go and explore it.
So it wasn't you're not doing your job well enough, or it wasn't that nature. He just saw such potential in you.
Well, he used to write as well, and I was writing a lot of angry poems at the time about kind of the AQA kind of mark scheme and how like restrictive I felt things were, and how we weren't helping young people to develop, all the things I mentioned that were finding frustrating. And it seemed like at that point in time, this was like 10 years ago, I didn't have any kids. I didn't have any kind of huge responsibilities. I had like a credit card bill. And I remember that nearly put me off doing it.
Huh.
But I thought, I'll always have it. I won't be able to get rid of it. I might as well just try it. But yeah, I just quit my job. And,
wow.
Money's a kind of, it's not the be all and end all, but it I was ahead of 2 year groups. I think I was going to be on like 40 grand like the next year.
It's a comforting factor, isn't it, of life? Yeah. Sort of a good foundation to stand on.
Yeah.
But not always fun.
Yeah. And then, but then like as of September, like nothing. Wow. And like trying to like work out how to make money.
Were you really not enjoying the system at school then?
No,
Was there lots of stuff within the mainstream
There were
industry?
lots of things I loved about teaching, but there were some things that I just found tough. There was one thing that really kind of really pissed me off. So we had this event every year called Poetry Live, and I love it. Like we take year 10s over to London, and they go and see the poets who appear in the AQA anthology. They stand up and they perform their work, and they hear these poems being read aloud. And my favorite part of it is they also hear the poets explain why they wrote the poem or what they were going through at the time. And I really like that, because I always liked the idea that my students understood that people didn't just write poems. I think some people do, but that people don't just write poems so they can be analysed in an English classroom. Sometimes it's a good reason to write a poem because you've experienced something difficult, or you want to write something to get someone else through a difficult time, or I don't know, you just want to kind of impress someone or whatever. But that people write poems for reasons other than to be studied academically, and so I love that. But then they also had the AQA chief examiner at the time, who told them how to do the best they could in the exam, which is very important as well. But I found during this particular thing that he was really condescending, like really. I know when I went to university, I said to someone the other day this, when I went to university, it's like I've kind of signed a contract where I'm going to sit down with a professor and they're kind of going to transmit to me in these lectures or these kind of sessions that I don't know anything yet. And I need to kind of wind my neck in and listen and everything. But I don't think when it's a core subject at GCSE, that similar kind of tone, that kind of patronising tone, is a good idea. I just think it's like, it was rude. So I felt he was quite patronising to my students, and and they even said like he thinks we're all stupid, and I was like, no, it's cool, just let's listen, everything. And then at one point he said they'd had the worst form of poetry analysis the year before, and he wanted to make sure no one made this mistake again. A student had been studying a poem called Island Man, which has been on the anthology for ages. Like I wrote about it when I was back at school, and the poem is quite short. It's about a man who feels trapped between two worlds. So he comes from this beautiful island that he used to live on. This reminds me, I loved it because it reminded me of Unst in some ways, but his is much more kind of like a beautiful kind of, it suggests a kind of, almost kind of like I guess a kind of tropical island with these kind of fresh greens and stuff of the island. And then he's also trapped within London where he lives. And it's very kind of like busy in the city, and it's kind of very grey and everything. And he can't be happy because he's trapped between these two worlds, the island and the city. And he's trapped between being like awake in the city and asleep and dreaming of this island and stuff. And the student in their essay had said that if you took the poem Island Man and if you turned it on its side, it looked a little bit, the lines could look a little bit like a cityscape, skyscrapers and stuff. And then if you took it on the other side, it could look like a wave coming in on the beach. And maybe the action of rotating the poem would be a bit like the action of going from standing to lying down, and the action of being awake and going to sleep. And they'd said that in the essay. And the AQA chief examiner said it was the worst form of poetry analysis he'd ever read. The student had got 0 marks. He'd made sure they had, and they deserved to get 0 marks because that poem, when turned on its side, looks like nothing more, like any poem, he said, looks like nothing more than a poem turned on its side.
I want to give him a nuggie.
Yeah, well, and I was sat there at the time and I was like, I think it's the thing I find weird about this. I've had to ask teachers who were there since. I go, I didn't make it up, did I? This is what he said. And they go like, no, he absolutely said that. And you're going,
this is what we were talking about in the podcast earlier on.
Yeah, again, and this is like
deciding this is what's right.
Yeah. And I loved my job. Like I used to deliver assemblies for students all the time. We used to run extra clubs, run my rap club, we ran a board gaming club, all these cool fun things. And we kind of, I was really passionate about doing a lot of cool stuff, but that's not what I was being paid for at the end of the day. I'm being paid to get them through that AQA GCSE exam. And I'm being told that fundamentally, at the heart of what my job is about, there is a right and a wrong way to analyse. And I'm having all these thoughts about rap being kind of dismissed as being like dumb or not, not worthy of study in some way. And I'm just thinking, what is this that I'm buying into, and I'm what are we creating through this process? Where's the entrepreneurship? How, I don't understand how. I just think if you can argue it with like points, or you can make a statement about it, and you can back it up, it's kind of interesting and kind of cool. And yeah, so here's the thing. I said to my students, and I'm not happy about this, and my students would go, get over it, sir, and all this. And I was like, no, it's not that big a deal. I was like, I don't know, I think it kind of is. And I went to the toilet during the interval, just before the interval, because I didn't want to go in when it was going to get rammed. And I went in, and the toilets were trashed. Somewhat, probably my students had done this. So, the sinks were full of paper towels, paper towels on the floor, water flooding all over the floor.
Wow.
It was a state. And I remember walking to the bathroom and stopping and going, oh, fuck, this is quite bad.
Yeah.
And then stopping and looking at the floor and going, oh, hang on, I see what they've done. And if I turn my head on its side, the paper towel spelled out the word twat. And I thought, oh, right, it couldn't look like two different things if you turn your head on your side. All right, that's kind of cool. So yeah, I went away and I wrote a poem, directed, for the AQA chief examiner, what I would love to say to him if I could be as patronising to him as I felt he was to my students. And the poem itself, if you turned it on its side, is like a middle finger.
This is a lovely story.
And so that was like what led to the conversation with the head. It was like,
wow, okay.
Do you think maybe...
As in a lovely story is in powerful story, I mean.
Yeah.
The fact that you had this experience, because that sort of ran sharp in me.
And some of these things you talk about, when I talk about in my shows or in my poems, they seem so big that I almost can't... I was almost asking people did this happen? And yeah, it did happen. And he I'm pretty sure he came to see my show, because I think he knew I talked about him in it. I had a show I took to Edinburgh about it. And there was one day, there was a guy in the front, and I'm pretty sure it was him, and he looked pissed off.
Oh.
And I just did the whole show, and that was it.
You did it back to him.
I just performed the whole thing.
What goes around comes around.
But I don't know. I just felt he had maybe a bit more of a responsibility to...
I remember Muzzy saying he went on ITV to have... Do you know when they try and really polarise something, where you've got a silly rapping teacher here and world's strictest head teacher here?
I watched that little video because I saw that he was in that situation, and I was like, go on, Muzzy, let's see what happened. And you know what? Muzzy, if you are listening, I think you came across really well.
He'll be listening.
I think he was incredibly compassionate and balanced, but I have got very little time for Catherine Burble Singh. I think she's a worrying individual.
It was verging on child abuse was one of the comments. Rapping to students is
what did you
child
say?
abuse.
Yeah. So Catherine Burble Singh is an interesting kettle of fish. So she's the social mobility czar appointed by the government now, who has recently said that we need to stop trying to encourage working class kids to get into Oxford and Cambridge, and they should be happy making smaller achievements. And you're going, social mobility czar? So
putting these nice fences.
She's selling herself on this she's selling herself on the strictest headmistress, and the school's super strict and all these kind of things. And I think that sounds great to a lot of teachers, the idea of discipline and structure, and I think those things are really, really important. But I every time I've heard her talking about things, even when she's talking about those things, I think this sounds like there's a very simplified answer to everything. She reminds me of Ben Shapiro or something, to be honest, where I'm kind of like, there's a very...
Too absolute.
Yeah, it's all in absolutes. And I often think,
nuance.
Where are the kids that are falling through the cracks in this? Yeah. What happens if you have, a kid with certain educational needs? And she really kind of avoids those things. And I think she focuses on it's more just they're not really, so also with rap, sorry, it's a bit garbled, but with rap, I've heard her say it's a cancer.
Yeah.
that these rappers are all victims and they're all like they're all awful and it's really terrible. I think she said that's one of her key things is that young people should not be allowed to listen to rap. But she's also said that it's okay. I think she said like white liberal middle class, like guys like me, I suppose. You know, I don't understand that it's okay for me to listen to it, but for like a kid from more of a working class background or something, this can like ruin their lives. It won't hurt them if they're and you get into a really interesting debate on it's kind of like what if someone less white and middle class than me got to hear this? Ooh, then it would be a bit dangerous, wouldn't it? There's some quite worrying statements kind of.
It's what I've learned doing this podcast. There's about 3 things in the world that I'm absolute about, and then everything else has got a varying shade of grey between it.
But I saw her in the interview with Muzzy, and I think she was really trying to like recruit him. I think she wanted him to work at her school.
Yeah, it was kicking off, wasn't it?
Yeah,
there was some tension. I don't know what sort of tension, but it was there.
Yeah, she's got this. I mean, she
liked him.
She's kicked off about Stormzy and all these other guys. And the thing I think she wants to engage with, because she's paid money by the government, you know, is a lot of rap is kind of a mirrored surface, right? It has no mass of its own, but it reflects back your situation and your environment, and that's why it's so powerful, and that's why it can travel so far and like and show so many stories, is because it's just this mirrored surface that an artist can use to kind of reflect, you know, kind of ping out and just show everything that's going on around them. And unsurprisingly, when certain people from certain parts of the country and parts of the world get that mirrored surface and then reflect it, they have some bad stuff that they've got to talk about. But rather than kind of looking at what the things that they're explaining and talking about, shutting them up, that might be, saying that they should be banned and we shouldn't listen to them.
Disempowering.
Yeah, that sounds like it's a little bit more... I can see why the government wants to pay
an
it,
agenda.
basically.
An agenda there. Yeah, and mate, I love what you're saying there. And let's dive into where it all started sort of not transcending, but the trajectory hit for you. Because did you then get out of your job?
Yeah. And
you decided, right, rap, spoken word, poetry was going to be the future for you?
I think so. I think at that point in time, I just knew if I could survive a year and do a master's. So I applied to do a master's in creative writing at Goldsmiths Uni, which is tough because I could only just about afford the train, you know, like back and forward. It was, it was financially, it was a very tough time the first kind of few months. I was kind of living out of like sausage rolls in my bag and stuff, and met some really lovely people at the uni. But I also met a lot of people. You know, I met a lot of people who are kind of financially pretty stable and sorted. And I was just rocking around trying to do every gig I could. You know, like just making myself poorly by just kind of like just flat out, you know, trying not to think about
hammering it and sausage rolls.
Yeah, sausage rolls. I had a pot of mustard and a bag full of sausage rolls.
Good man.
And it was just I'd rock up at Goldsmiths, be like, what are you doing tonight? I'd be like, I've got to go over here to, you know, this place.
So you were seriously all over the scene, and it was nights everywhere.
Yeah, and I wasn't making hardly any money. Like I was doing a bit of stuff, but then I was kind of like, you know, writing and just flat out terrified.
So what was the moment? Was it the Blizzard moment?
I think the Blizzard moment was a big moment. I think I think the moment that the Blizzard rap battle went online and went viral, that was big. I had a poem called Girl Who Reads that went viral as well. That got like 1 million views in like 24 hours. And we had no PR budget behind any of this stuff.
That was before the Blizzard, was it? Or during
I think there's about a month afterwards.
Right.
Or like maybe a month beforehand, but they both came out and they both lit fire at the same time. I felt very much like around that time, if I shared something, it seemed to like go a bit. I almost felt like maybe people who were kind of like, I don't know, what's it like, people who are kind of like, you know, sharing things that are going viral and stuff, they were kind of like keeping an eye out on what I was putting out because it seemed like it might have some traction. So I'd see things were appearing on Upworthy or on other sites, you know, and Reddit and stuff, and I wasn't posting these things. I just put them on YouTube.
They had their eyes on you.
Yeah, but yeah, I think I felt like that a little bit during that time. So yeah, like the rap battle with Blizzard became, I think, the most viewed UK versus UK rap battle ever at that point in time. I'm not sure if that's been surpassed for UK versus UK, but But yeah, so that was pretty huge.
So
and
what do your emails look like and your inboxes
Oh,
after
man.
this moment?
Yeah.
Is it just
So it was
chaos?
like dead. It was dead. And then suddenly, and this might not sound like a lot to anyone listening, but I was probably getting about 20 emails a day.
That's a lot.
From TV and
For
film.
a poet.
Yeah, TV and film execs and staff, advertising boards. And the thing is, if I couldn't respond to them all, I remember I got over 1,000 public like ats on Twitter when it went up in one day. And it was the first day when it went viral because it went onto the front page of Reddit, the rap battle. And I tried to reply to every single person on Twitter, and it took me like 4 hours or 5 hours to just try and go, thanks, oh, thank you, going through it. And I was like, I can't do it. I don't know what I'm doing. And yeah, it was quite scary because you there with nothing to work with, and then suddenly you've got all this stuff. How do you make the most of this? Because I was aware this is not going to last forever. What do you do then? How do you latch on to something else? So I got agents, and they were pretty good. That they didn't really know what to do about it either. The thing that I always found difficult with the rap battling was, so it blew up massively. Like it was mad. I was getting kind of loads of like different famous people were kind of sharing the stuff and talking about it. Everyone was like really pumped, but also a lot of people were very kind of like negative about Blizzard. And very condescending towards Blizzard, because it was this teenager and this teacher having a rap battle, and the teacher won, and I was like, oh, yeah. And actually, I kind of saw that same mirroring of what frustrated me about teaching and us not taking rap seriously and not helping, listening to young people and going, we just tell you what you should be studying and focused on. And that was kind of coming out on a national level through the national press and how everyone was responding to it. And I spoke to Blizzard at the time.
Painting a picture in a certain light.
Yeah, and he was getting death threats from people.
Wow.
And
I'd just say, if the audience are listening to this and they're really enjoying it and this particular bit, what episode is it where you talk to Blizzard about this so they can go and listen?
Oh yeah, so
that?
Mark Can't Rap. I can't remember exactly. It's season 2, maybe episode 6 or 7.
Because he dissects it beautifully and articulates everything that was going off in there.
Yeah,
so...
there was an interesting conversation to have because I felt guilty about some things, but then I did and I didn't because we chatted a lot through the whole process. And it was interesting chatting to him afterwards and hearing how actually there were a lot of things that he found it very positive at the same time as well.
Yeah.
Which is really good. But I found it uncomfortable. And then when I would have battles with other MCs, I would find that like if I was battling, for example, I battle a guy who is like, who's not white, then even like guys who like, I think kind of have a bit of a white supremacist vibe about them online, I share in my battles and like hyping me up. And there's like a big vibe of like, yeah, this white middle class guy is coming here teaching these guys and I had like, I remember at a music festival once I had like a poet come up to me and I think he thought he was complimenting me, but he said like, you're teaching them all a lesson doing all this stuff. They kind of, see that and I was like, man, this is not
where hip hop come from.
Yeah, and I was like, this is not why I'm battling. This is not why I'm battling. And it's on me. I'm the only one who can take the flak, the hit for that, because when you're only doing rap battles and people are only seeing you in a confrontational situation with another person, they don't realize that you're really good mates with these people. You really admire and respect them.
Too suckered into it, don't they?
Yeah, we used to. Everyone I battled, we'd have a conversation before, and I'd say, "Is there anything you don't want to mention?" Some battlers have disclosed really personal things to me, and I'd be like, "Cool, I'm not going to mention those things." And I remember my mum had cancer at the time. I told someone about that. I said, "Just so you know, you have something on me that I have on you." My mum had cancer, and and I find that really painful at the moment. And we agreed not to write about those things.
Oh mate!
And then you have a battle with each other, and afterwards you're
this.
kind of like going, like he could have said anything to me. And that would have been, as long as the internet exists, that's there. But there was a level of respect on both sides about the whole process. And that was the thing I found really funny, is that there was a huge amount of respect within rap battling. I found, and warmth, and people being very supportive towards me coming in and learning about it. Like my mate Tony D, who's amazing. Like really helping me out through the process. And then you come out of that and suddenly I'm like being championed by all these guys that are looking down on the same thing that I'm there to study. And I just hit a point with it and I was like, this isn't the way for me to explore this anymore. Like, even though it's busy, like when my agent said, so now I've gone from being dead, got loads of work, everything's great. And I said to my agent, I think I'm going to stop battling, maybe. I want to explore it in a different way, like maybe with a podcast or something. And I remember being told, he was like, I can't sell that. He's like, the teacher of the rap battles, I can sell that in like one sentence. I think Muzzy would be an interesting person to talk to about this, because I think Muzzy's had one foot into this kind of world.
Yeah.
And like, it's all about how can you sell something quick. Like, he's been sold very much, I think, on TV as like the teacher that freestyle raps, you know, and all that kind of stuff.
He talks about it on this podcast in one of the episodes.
I'm gonna listen to it properly, because like, I think
really
he's
interesting. Now
I think he and I have had a very similar kind of like journey, and I think we've engaged with like a level of like kind of an artificial attempts to present us in an artificial light. Do you know what I mean? Because it makes it an easier one sentence hook.
And it's not who you are.
It's not who we are, and it's not kind of what we're doing. And I think, and I think Muzzy's got like a lot of depth, and he's a really, he's a great human being. I love him. But I imagine he's probably had this,
podcast.
But he's probably had some of the same pressures that I've found when I was doing it.
Yeah.
Because and the reason for that is because the white middle class representative education engaging in rap. That's weird.
Yeah.
That's so weird, and we should. That's the tagline.
It's what the media sort of want to hook onto, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So
this is an anomaly. Let's play with it.
Yeah, yeah. So like, got dropped by the agent, and then kind of like started working on stuff on my own in the way that I felt like in a way that felt fairer. You know, like that teacher part of me was like, this feels fair now. Like I can say how I want to say it, and I know that if people want to, you know, I get white nationalists who are going like, rah, like, okay, but you're going to have to tune in and listen to me talking about Black Lives Matter and speaking with artists and learning about kind of dismantling this thing. So yeah, so they'll go. So they don't want that stuff.
Or learn.
Yeah. So that's kind of it, really.
Well, mate, for you, I need a 4 or 5 hour slot, really.
Sorry, I can run on for ages.
No, but it's not you talking, it's just the amount of directions and angles we could go in with this, because the rap battle scene, there must be so much meat around that.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. It's been very sad to see the scene like collapse. I mean, it's still going. There's been some like amazing stuff going on, particularly in Manchester, down in Bristol as well. But yeah, we had something really popping and amazing for a brief moment of time.
Did you feel at the time not respected in the fact how you'd been pigeonholed and showcased as, this white teacher, so on, that they didn't respect how well you were conducting that art form? Would you have preferred that rap battle to have got less traction, but maybe have kept the dignity behind it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I know what you mean. So, yeah, I mean, there's a bit of a debate. And like, so for example, in some ways, it's almost better to get a lot of views on a battle and to lose it.
Yeah.
To lose the decision on a judging decision, because then everyone like goes, they know your work, but they also go like, I kind of think it's hard done by or whatever like that. And then people rate you for that. Whereas if you kind of like gain loads of kind of like traction, everyone kind of says you've done great or whatever, people can get a bit more like resentful. Like, is he being pushed beyond his like abilities and stuff? I don't know. Like, I've not really given much thought to it or spent any time with it. I found the whole thing weird. Like, even today, I went to go and get some work printed up for a family show I'm trying out on Saturday. This new kind of family show about the environment and kind of caring for animals, like post-COVID and stuff. And the guys in the print shop were like fans of the old rap battling stuff, and had a little chat with them for a few minutes. And it feels like a whole world away now. But I guess I don't know. I think what was interesting is when it kind of went viral, I was being presented by the mainstream media as this incredible wordsmith. Like, they were kind of painting as I was like I think a lot of people think it's freestyled anyway when it's not. You know, you kind of prepare the rounds and stuff. But I think a lot of people thought like he's this erudite, you know, all this kind of thing. And I don't think what I performed was like that great compared to the opponents. I just think that wearing a suit goes a long way in making you look like we have all these kind of cultural signers for stuff. Gimmick. Yeah. So I don't know. I think I don't really mind any of that. I think it definitely was a gimmicky kind of like concept.
Yeah.
But then we properly battled. That's the thing. So it was like, we did lay into each other. And I've done quite a few battles since then. I went over to Manila and battled Looney in the Philippines, which was like, I mean, he's super famous over there. Yeah. And to just try and win the crowd off of him was insane. You know, like, so yeah, so I kind of think I've done enough stuff with it. I miss battling.
What about the transition period though from it? Because when you've hit something that's started to get 5.5 million views and so on,
Yeah.
do you try and hold on to that success? And is it hard to keep hold of?
Yeah, definitely. When I was having battles afterwards, I was always noticing they weren't getting the traction. I remember the next one got 300,000 views, and I was like, And now I'm like,
I've had my time in the sun.
that was really good.
Yeah, that was the one. Yeah,
that's really good.
right,
That's fine. But I think I work with a lot of young people, and they work really hard on their writing, and then they put something on YouTube, and they get like 20 views.
Yeah.
And they feel embarrassed or ashamed, and they stop putting work out. And I think all the time, I say to them, it doesn't matter. You're doing really well. Keep on putting work out. Keep on doing stuff. And so, yeah, I've tried to kind of say that to myself a bit more now as well. So, I mean,
did you get lost in the sort of glitz and glam and excitement for a bit, or
no? I got a bit paralyzed by it. I think I had a period of time where I found it like I worried about putting a new work out, because I thought every new piece of work is going to get less. It's going to get less. It's going to get less. But yeah, now I don't really see it like that anymore. I just think you just got to make what you can make and do what you can do. Like I was doing workshops the other day for a school and a bunch of schools overseas. And one of the schools in Singapore emailed me yesterday and told me that one of the girls that ran a workshop for has made a book, based upon the work that we were doing, and there's a dedication to me in the front of the book. And I read that and I was like, that's pretty cool. And so, yeah, I think there's always lots of things that can be really good. And I guess that's one person has done something really cool off of the work we've done together. And I don't know, I'm quite happy with that being as much a measure of success as a million views or something online or whatever. Also, I don't think you can go viral in the same way now that you could back then. I think the algorithm's so tight that I think it's quite hard for people to get the traction that we were getting back then. A bunch of us.
Quite a sensitive soul, or got like quite a wholesome heart. I suppose when you get them moments where it's outside of you, it's for somebody else. That for me anyway, it feels much greater than when I was getting this views and attention and heat on my direction. I actually felt an uncomfortability there. I never wanted to sort of accept it, and maybe that's something deep rooted in my psyche. But I've always found when it's a kid that's achieved because of your presence or just something, a prompt or whatever, that's where I've gone, oh God, this feels great. This feels so rewarding. Are you on a similar alignment there?
I think so. I think we probably all are, because I think what you had there, it works itself out, doesn't it? Like, some things are really good, and that you kind of grow through it, and then something like that, it's almost like you've got a splinter stuck in your finger. It'll work its way out eventually. Do you know what I mean? And you'll find out what you want to do. Maybe you don't want to, go. I said that my rap battle time was kind of too noisy for me. Like, in some ways, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it. I did like the number of people that come out to my shows and stuff was pretty cool. But then, I don't know, like, I'm now got a great agent, but I love my agent. She's amazing. And we're now focusing on books for children. I kind of have hit a point now where I've realized I kind of want to make poetry books and things for children, help them develop. And I think that's a really good way of kind of nudging people forward to be more kind and compassionate and more open. Adults are sometimes can be a bit more closed to those kind of messages. And if you put those messages on, weirdly right now, they're almost seen as political. Or overly political. You can have lots of people arguing about those things.
It's all quick fire, isn't it? They're ready to make a judgment and a call on something.
I find parents will take their kids to go and see shows where the messages are certain things. They go and see Disney films or whatever, and the messages are all kind of about compassionate and caring for people and everything else. And then the parents will
put a spin on it or a slant.
Yeah, but the parents will go their way separately and will vote for, people would put refugees on planes to Rwanda and stuff like that. So, like, we seem to accept that, like, we need to have these messages of kindness and compassion for young people for our kids, but we kind of like we don't practice it as adults.
Congruent with that.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of where I want to kind of focus now, is kind of writing for kids.
And what about, here we are, the podcast, Mark Can't Rap.
Yeah. Well, that'll be the only kind of focus for adults at the moment. Is so Mark Can't Rap is nearing the end of the second season. It was kind of written and mostly kind of produced during COVID, when we were all having to kind of, it took us a long time to make each episode because you're kind of having to send things around to each other and you can't see each other face to face.
How long would one episode usually take?
2 months maybe.
2 months per episode.
I think I wouldn't.
What are they? Half an hour.
Yeah, well, about this season probably now about an hour, like 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
But I think what would happen is, like, I would have to try and contact an artist that we're going to talk to. I'd then kind of structure in what I think the episode could focus on, maybe interview them, then take the lessons from what we've learned, chat with Ross, my producer, then work out what the learning is of the lesson, then kind of like tinker with the script of where we are at that point, to then put the interview inside that script. So the idea is that the MCs in the second series are definitely like the heroes of each episode, and the idea is that I'm struggling with one thing during lockdown in particular, that they come and like their lessons kind of help me to kind of like see the way through that month, and I know what the problems are at that point in time, and that kind of guides me when I'm talking with them. But sometimes the MC would say something really interesting, profound, and you think, well, maybe we need to kind of change. You know, we've got to add something to this problem so we can kind of get the learning to come through. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of like scripting that works then around the interview. Then I have to kind of record the voiceover, send it to G, the sound editor, who then like splices it all together. We then have to re-record some of the voiceover because probably I'm a bit wooden or it doesn't fit. Then we add all the sound and the bedding and stuff. So
he's phenomenal the way that he's conducted that, the producer.
Oh yeah.
It just I said this to you before in the kitchen, but I don't usually like in podcast structure.
Yeah.
I really like the free flow nature of, like, say, the Rogan. I listen to some Russell Brand and so on. And that's kind of, I've heard this in one of your episodes, actually. I think it was Malik Payne.
Michael Payne.
Michael Payne, yeah. He said, I just create what I want to hear. Yeah. And I do that with podcasts. It was that clumsiness.
Michael Payne was amazing. Like, I really enjoyed chatting to him. He's episode 1 of season 2 when COVID first hits, and I was just scared. I mean, we all were scared, and that's what I think is quite interesting. This is why I'm really proud so far of season 2, because I don't feel like there's much media, like artistic media, that really explores what we all went through. We're not there yet, but we documented it as it went on. You know, we were at the Black Lives Matter rallies as they were taking place. We've got those in the series as it's taking place. We kind of document, you know, masks being enforced in shops, people arguing over the kind of the guidelines. And it's very easy to get confused about the events almost and what happened when. You know, we document Boris Johnson going into, into hospital because he's shaking hands with everyone in a COVID ward and stuff like that. And we document all of that alongside speaking with these artists and like learning, you know, seeing what we can take from rap to get us through like the most challenging experience.
And that's what I was
of our lives
saying is when I've heard structure in podcasts before, over structure, it felt very jarred.
Yeah.
And I couldn't sort of listen along too well.
Yeah.
It was forced. And the way you and the producer and everyone behind the show have conducted this, it feels so authentic, just so real, so raw.
Thank you. It's been tough, and like I'm a bit nervous at the moment because we're like halfway through the second season. We like had a little breather because we were struggling to get everything done at the quality we wanted to get it done. You know, we'd written the script, we'd kind of gone through things, but also we were right at the point we're going. To be honest with you, we were like, how are we going to end this? Because we didn't know where it was going to go as the series was progressing. We've raised some expectations for what's going to come out of it by the end. And we were really at the point we're going, how do we kind of like have everyone feeling like it's been a worthwhile journey by the end? So yeah, I think we're just about there. The next episode is coming out next week. So we're back on track again.
If you could name some of the voices that you've had on it, because you had some incredible
well, we
names.
had Ghostface Killer, like, gave me like a proper pep talk.
I've heard that bit today.
That was pretty. That episode is probably my favorite episode, because I just know how long it took me to write and put it together. And so for that episode, that episode focuses on Boris Johnson's gone into intensive care. I don't feel like I trust our world leaders, but we still tune in. We were tuning in to watch these kind of like press conferences to tell us what we were supposed to be doing. It was a real kind of scary time, and at the same time, I needed some hope. And my wife Lucy had suggested Cameo. I couldn't speak to any MCs because everyone was in a really bad headspace. It was really difficult to coordinate any kind of stuff. So I decided to conduct an experiment and see whether I could go to Cameo, like a website where you could like contact MCs and pay them to send you messages, and get hope to get me through COVID. And that episode was like pretty cool. We had R.A. the Rugged Man. He was really, really great in it. We had Charlie Tuna from Jurassic 5. Crazy. I mean, his statement was really profound and really thoughtful and meaningful. And I hope that episode was a really good example of how we have this type of authority and this type of these types of individuals like Boris Johnson that maybe we're told to look to, just like the kids are told that there's only one type of writing, or it's only certain types of writing that they can draw kind of like meaning from, and then you've got these other guys who certainly are not, supported by the same kind of like establishment institutions as Boris Johnson is, and I think they provide real caring hope within the episode. So we had that. That's kind of cool. Michael Payne's amazing. When we had him feature, we had Inja, who was like won huge number of awards for his drum and bass material. We got Tony D, UK undefeated rap battle champion for like 6 years, and like beat every single opponent to the point he had to like give up the belt, and he was kind of like my headmaster in the first season. It's been amazing. We've got Genesis Elijah is in the next episode, and the things he tells me in the next episode coming up, they broke my head. They absolutely broke my head and totally changed how I feel about writing.
This is what I was going to ask, actually, because such an eclectic mix, and subjectively, all the things they're saying all belong and they've all got a powerful place. But was there one character, and you may have just mentioned it then, that really tilted it on its head for you and made you think differently? Because for me, I've listened to all the episodes now, but it was the girl.
Shady. She's amazing.
That was one. I started filling up. I started getting really emotional.
I think Shady was the first person like really who challenged me in the series. And it was, I shared what I've been working on so far, and she was kind of like, okay, this is cool. But she was like going, but I think I said, what, be honest, we've known each other for a little while. And I said, what do you think? And she said, I just don't know why you're writing it. Like why?
I love pure honesty.
Yeah, why are you writing this? Is this just an experiment to you? And it felt like someone who's given their life to this art kind of stopping you and going, is this just like a joke to you? Are you just like mucking about with this thing? And I thought that was really interesting. And I think there is something about perhaps some of the privileges I have in society where I kind of can like pull back and not have to talk about anything personally. I'm in a fairly privileged position. I can just document this rap and talk about it and everything else. And it woke me up that moment. And I think what I wrote is probably the best thing I've written on a beat. But then this new direction we're going to go in is going to be super interesting because the most recent episode I've tried to write a rap track for my dog Bruce. So we kind of really gone into it, but we pick apart why that didn't work as it goes on as well, so we'll see. That
polarity that you offer though has inspired me, because I always felt it had to be of this nature of real and honest and raw and often dark, but being playful with words and just experimenting how they go together is something I'm going to try and go and take away and experiment with.
Well, so that's lovely. And you know what? That's probably why I like writing for kids, because you've got space to do that. I need to feel more comfortable with minor key beats. But
you smashed it, by the way, dude. It's so good.
Cheers.
I listened to that whole episode and it was so beautifully constructed with the ex-student of yours too.
Lewis,
Obviously, he's had a lot of turmoil in his life. to then set a precedence of, okay, took a serious tone now, and then Shady gives that gravitas to what are you actually creating, and then you really go away, do your homework, and build something so true to who you are and that side of you, and go to the minor. That episode really put me in a position where I thought, oh wow, I'm back. I want to get creative again, get moving.
Oh, well, that's cool. Well, maybe, and this is, I mean, she says a great thing there. She says, I said that feels quite, I think I said to her, that feels quite scary. And she said, well, that's where you've got to be a bit if you're going to, make something really good. And I would say that, like, weirdly, like, everything that's worked well for me has always been when I've been scared. When the rap battling, I was so scared. I've never been more scared of anything than that Blizzard battle. I was terrified. I wanted to leave. I said to my mates, don't physically let me, I will try and run, I think. Like, I've never felt like that before. I was that scared.
Wow.
And I think, writing in a minor key, I find it scary, but I guess I've got to do it more. I'm going to have to do it again. Yeah. You're right. But yeah, I think that's it. It's kind of being a bit scared is probably a good thing.
With this series then, are you confident in how you're finishing it off? Are you happy with where you've got to? Not to
I'm not certain. So the thing with this series is I'm supposed to be writing a banger. That's where it's kind of going for.
Yeah.
Because we kind of talked about doing an album. That was an initial plan, and we were like, we don't know how we can make an album during lockdown. It's going to be really hard, and I may not physically be in a space where I can even do this. Like, it's going to be really tough. So we kind of went with this storyline of like just one track to fix everything, just one track to kind of, and the problem is that we found was like that was an immense amount of pressure to put on this one track, and also like a banger. The idea of like a banger is normally, I thought at first it would have to be my best writing, but increasingly as I talk to people, it kind of seems that actually the banger's almost like the beat is like
entertaining,
70% of the
lasting,
and you can go
movement.
You can go major key, right? But so I think working out how to kind of, I guess, like sound cool or sound confident on a beat, because I feel really uncool like all the time. I think
you've come into your own with it though.
Yeah, well, Michael Payne said it was kind of, he talks about like, he was like, you just can't picture anyone like you being able to rap. And I guess, he might have a point in that, like, I did grow up in the least urban environment that could ever exist. Like, we all learned how to play the fiddle. That was what we did on Unst, so.
Do you feel you have found your sound, though, with rap? Because...
Well, I think this is it. And I'm hoping, I got a message from my producer G, like, just as we were sat down to do this, to say that he's nearly finished one of the episodes, and that episode is hopefully going to drill into like, what is my sound?
Right, okay.
And I haven't listened to it yet, so I'm on the drive back tonight. I'm going to listen to it in the car, and I'm either going to go, oh, it all fits, it slots, or I'm going to drive back and go, oh, this doesn't make any sense. So we'll see.
I remember when I was first trying on a beat, and I went, as most people do, really American with it, because that was what I was exposed to, that was what I understood.
Yeah.
I just imitated, now I'm doing a song like this, and I'm like, where's this come from? And I listen back to sort of childhood memories and songs that I was listening to. It goes, oh, of course. So then when I went more Mike Skinner style, in and off the beat, all around it, and allowing it to breathe a bit and move with it, that was me, I found, when I kept playing with it. And then I love lo-fi music. Do you know, it's very gentle and sort of in-out beat movement. And I felt you could really be a poet on top of that, and it gave to it.
Yeah, I haven't really found out what I want to kind of like go with yet. It's still at the point where the podcast is called Mark Can't Rap, and I still feel almost phobic. Like, I'm really scared about writing rap. Like, I really just think I just sound stupid. I can't do it. And I was chatting to like MCs, and my mate Mixie was saying to me the other day, he was like, you just got to do this, you got to do this. And I was like, I don't think you can understand. I'm really, really, really think I'm awful at it. Like, I really am convinced I'm bad. And even like, it took me a long time to think that Highs and Lows, the one that I wrote for Shady, I was like, this is rubbish. Like, for ages, I was like, this is really bad. But people have since gone like,
Dude.
no. People have gone like, I actually have it in my playlist. I actually listen to it.
Can I give you some unsolicited opinion? I'm going to do it anyway. That for me, because I've listened to a lot of your stuff now and on YouTube as well, I love that version of you, and that is just an opinion. But when it's too major and beatsy, there's a rap voice that comes out, and there's this Mark Grist essence. Yeah. But when you speak from the heart, and you do it on this minor tone, and the beat's very lo-fi, it's forever moving, and you go back to poetry, Mark. Yeah. Just as an opinion, I love that version of you. That's who I listen to, and I'd put on. If
I could feel more comfortable, like that would be easier in a way.
Did you feel comfortable doing it, even though you didn't like the sound of?
Yeah, I did feel more comfortable delivering it.
It felt.
I felt
natural.
like I could vary my vocal tone a bit more. So when I'm kind of going like on the other stuff, I feel like I'm just like very monotone. Like I kind of, I'm trying to rap, and I do that.
Yeah.
But like if on that one, I felt I was able to deliver a little bit more like I'm delivering a poem.
I love you said that, because that's what really genuinely comes across.
Okay, that's cool.
Interesting.
That was good unsolicited advice. I enjoyed that one.
Dude, I've loved today, but now the time is here.
Yes.
We've got to go and educate some kids.
Yeah,
the youths of Ripley.
Yeah.
I love you here today, man. It's such an awesome character. If you come back and teach D&D with the kids...
100%.
Can we do another podcast? But I think just a whole episode, because we've done nearly 2 hours, to be fair.
Yeah.
But a whole episode on Mark Can't Rap is needed, because I've got a bit of an idea about you now, and I've loved the story. Yeah. But I want to go into all the avenues and angles.
That's cool. It'd be great. I feel like I've just been on had a counselling session. It's been lovely.
Oh man,
I've really enjoyed it.
Such an awesome character. Yeah. Could you let everybody know?
Yes.
Where they can listen to Mark Can't Rap?
Yes, okay, so Mark Can't Rap, you can listen to it on Spotify, on iTunes, a bunch of other kind of podcasts. I think like most people have it. And so, if you want to listen to it, I would really recommend you start with season 1, episode 1. Yeah. You kind of need to follow the story through. You could start with season 1, episode 2 if you really want to go into the lockdown stuff. But I think the best journey you'll take it will be starting for season 1, episode 1.
Guys, this genuinely should have won awards. It's such a powerful...
Thanks,
I'm not going to just say this, because I was stuck on Joe Rogan for a long time.
Yeah.
And I did always love his sort of weird, random bunch of guests that he'd have on, and he can refute them as well. Do you know, if he doesn't agree with something, I like that he'll challenge. And I don't just take what he says as godsend, but I like that friction there. So to find a new podcast was hard for me, but having you come on this podcast, I needed to warm up, and I went straight for the Blizzard episode, because I thought, I know Blizzard, cool, let's have a listen. Yeah. And that was it. I was gone, okay, let's go episode 1, season 1. Yeah. And I'm got to season 2 already. I get on treadmills, I go for walks, I spend my day on my own a lot of the time. Yeah. And I honestly mean this, guys. It's the best podcast I've ever listened to. I really mean that.
What?
Out of all podcasts, it's my favourite. It's so good. You deserve an award for what you're doing. It's amazing.
Cheers, man. That's really nice.
Massive love to you, mate. I really mean it. Yeah. It's my favourite.
Oh, that's really, really kind. Like, it's been a slog, but like, and I think we're making something good. But yeah, it is a slog. So cheers,
man.
Don't
ever stop what you're doing, brother.
Oh, thank you.
High five.
High five.
Big love to you, my brother. Yeah. Guys, you've been a part of the Old Farm Bus, Back of the Bus Sessions podcast. Remember this, I'm going to leave you on it, and I always will, always do. Just be nice to one another, you beautiful set of buggers. All you got to do. See you later. Cheers, Mark.
Cheers. Bye.